Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, it is an honor to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive: time. And what a precious commodity. We spend that. When I was young, I just spent it like it was nothing. As I got older, I learned the value of it, and I learned how expensive it truly is. And Rhonda is here to spend some of that with us. And so I want to stop and honor her for coming and spending that precious commodity. The other is the journey. The journey gave her some stuff. It is a creator, and it created her, and it gave her a couple of gifts that are just sitting inside of her that we want access to. What are those things that it has deposited in her? Our wisdom, knowledge, insights, and understanding, all of these different things that we want access to. Why do we want access to them? So that you and I can become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. Rhonda, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm just so excited about being able to talk about just the threads that enlighten us daily and make sure that, hey, wait a minute, there's a purpose in what I'm living today. I'm real excited. I loved our pre show conversation. And I think that we will find that strengths come from not only our own story, but from others. We can learn to heal ourselves through those stories and storytelling.
I absolutely agree. And that's why the purpose of Threads of Enlightenment, so we can have folks like yourself that can assist us, that listen and hear your story so that we can grow and come through our pain. One of our customs here, Rhonda, is to ask this question. We level this to every individual, and we do it. I do it personally for a couple of things. I want the folks that are joining us listening to this podcast, for them to be alert to the fact that this journey here on this earth is not just about them alone. We have to be a part of this thing together. And my question to you is, how do you serve mankind?
For me personally, I serve mankind through not only my storytelling, but hopefully my story and my message and my research, or whatever my daily practice has been that day, can help, even if it's one person, from going into a downward spiral, because maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they need the tools, the reminder that we have the tools to be better, and not fall down the slippery slope into mental health issues, into depression, into whatever the struggle might be, because sometimes it just takes one individual. And hopefully mine today will be to reach one person. If it's just one person, I will love it and help us pull things together and realize that all we need to do is have faith, practice good behaviors for self and mankind and the animals, because I love the animals, and move forward and have self-awareness of how we affect the world too.
Yeah, and all of those principles we will get a chance to have a chance to talk about, because they are all very important principles that one has to visit as we are moving towards becoming a mature individual in our life. One of the very first spaces that we visit while we are here on this planet, Rhonda, is called the family. When we hit this planet, we have these individuals that are called mom and dad, and some of us have siblings that are part of this clan as well. And mom and dad, as I mentioned before, everyone is traumatized. We enter worlds through trauma. We were born here in this natural world through trauma. We begin our spiritual journey through trauma, whatever that looks like: broken relationships, sickness, disease, whatever that trauma is. We will die, traumatic situation, and go into the next realm also through trauma. So trauma gives birth to us. So in this family unit, we're going to learn a couple of things. We're going to learn about communication skills. We're going to learn about behavior. We're going to learn about all kinds of stuff in there. What was your family unit like?
So I'm from a two-parent household. There was 5 of us kids, so I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. So it was a very large unit for modern standards. In past generations, they may have had 13, 14, 15, whatever. We lived in a small town in the Midwest, just north of the Indianapolis area. So our community was part of our family,
Mm-hmm.
which meant there was church, and then you had your neighbors that, we didn't have streetlights because it was a small community. So you came in by the sound of the dinner bell, and there were animals and farmlands. And it was one of those communities that, a child could get on their bikes and ride it 2, 3, 4 miles away and then make their way back in time, for parents. And there was this stress of trauma happening into a community was not perceived to be there. Now,
Yeah.
whether, of course, there is always trauma that can happen. And we were told from a very young age, which I think helped us, that resiliency was up to you, that you had to learn to get back up on the horse. You had to get, if you got thrown off, you had to continue your journey no matter how tough it went. And so I think that Midwest viewpoint did help me develop resilience to hit those moments
Mm-hmm.
with more of a understanding look for the tools.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is such resilience play such a big part in our journey, if you will, our development as an individual. Why is that? Because all of us, the Bible says it rain on the just and the unjust. All of us, it rains on us. And so you're going to have hard times, and it's going to take resilience to go through those hard times. And so none of us on this planet is going to ever escape hard times. And so one of the keys or one of the arrows that you must have in your quiver is this resilience. And that's the stuff that will not make you quit. And you will push right through amongst all of the hardship and the difficult times, the dark times, the times that you will not know how you are going to make it, but you are going to make it. And that's the type of communication you have to have with yourself. I tell people, be very careful what you're saying because you are listening. So here you are, you're growing up in this particular environment. And I love the fact that you said where perceived trauma is not supposed to be there, but guess who's there, Rhonda? Human beings. And human beings are those beautiful creatures that tend to cause those traumas. And wherever we are, there's going to be some trauma, girl. And so here you are in this wonderful, picturesque, surroundings in life, and you're growing up. And your family, you have the 5 siblings, 5 brothers and sisters. Mine was the same thing. We had the same amount, and I know how that beautiful is. How were you growing up in that? What was Rhonda like? What type of girl was she in that space?
Well, I would say that, I was one of the people that you would have thought was like maybe a extrovert, but really I was introverted and fearful of being vulnerable in spaces. So I was in some cases considered maybe kind and social.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to compete with my siblings, so I would back away from things that they shined in and move to another direction, which ended up being, more trusting of friends and the outside world
Mm.
rather than my cocoon that should have kept me I put my trust in others a lot of times and maybe bucked the family system some. and questioned it because I wanted to know what the big world was like.
Mhm.
It was like I had a desire to understand. And so if you look at pictures of me younger, I was always carrying a book.
Yeah.
And that book may not have been what they would have considered age appropriate or what I should be reading, or wasn't even necessarily entertaining. Usually it might have been like an encyclopedia where I could look at the pictures and see what the world was and see what, the different animals looked like or whatever. Something that had engagement with the world. Because for me, I found that I had to sharpen my own iron because the community to me was still so small and protective that I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know, okay, you say this is bad, but I want to see it. How bad does it really get? So I was always that challenging one that had to play the game of uncle to
Yeah.
figure out what is it that's out there that I can learn from, I can grow from. And that also meant that it brought its own trials and tribulations to my life because guess what? I wasn't raised to be that way. So therefore, trusting the outside world meant I had no filter to understand what could happen when you
Yeah.
trust mankind.
Yeah, Rhonda, that's really a fascinating way because here is this girl, as you stated on the onset, that she was retreating, and yet you are confronting. That
Mm-hmm.
is an interesting dichotomy for a young individual to be dealing with at the same time, retreating amongst the family, but yet, even within the family, you are stepping out and pushing your boundaries, if you will. How in the world did you manage that? That your world must have been an interesting place because I can see and I can hear some wonderful conversations, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
between the older groups that are not used to someone challenging their their system, if you will.
One of the very first conversations that people remember about me when I was only about 5 years old,
Hmm.
when I was laying on the couch and I was a finger sucker.
Hmm.
And my father came into the room and said to my mother, "We need to break her of that habit." And
Hmm.
immediately I stood up and I said, "I know I should if I could, just like your cigarettes." So I was constantly pushing. And then the other thing is, I took things very literal about the
Yeah.
world. So I went to a small private school. 50 in my graduating class, started in preschool to my senior year.
Hmm.
And I was constantly challenging, if I saw inequality, whether it been men or women and, ethnicity or whatever, I took things literal. You told me that, all men are created equal. So
Hmm.
I would be the one that would push that boundary. And of course that caused stress. They'd say, one day in heaven is 10,000 days on earth. Well, can't scientists and the Bible be right? So I wanted to know, I wanted philosophical conversations too young for me really to have it. And what I found in that is it was beneficial. It was definitely beneficial, but it was also that I had to understand that my boundaries as a child was not necessarily the ones that I wanted.
Hmm.
My dad would always say, "Don't compare yourself to others." But I was always comparing because everybody else was older.
Yeah.
To me, that meant you're just telling me,
Yeah.
and it's not that the benefits of not comparing. Because when we compare, in Proverbs, it says, envy makes the bones rot.
Hmm. Yes, it
And
does.
so when you really, I call it deconstruct yourself to make yourself self-aware. I have to look at my personality, my
Hmm.
desire to push the boundaries. And then also I have to then consider self-regard as part of self-awareness. That doesn't mean you trust every person you pass. That doesn't mean that you create a bond with everybody because not everybody's going to value you or value your strengths like you need them to be.
Talk to me, Rhonda, when you're in high school now, because I want to see this, I want to hear this girl's story in high school, because that is a small town girl in high school. And high school, of course, is a small town place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have this real emotionally strong individual. What was your high school like?
Well, I still talk to almost every single one of the people that I went to school with. Believe
Wow.
it or not. Today, I'm 60 years old now. So, we call ourselves the Breakfast Club because we were in this strict environment. So us breaking the rules were like chewing gum in class. Being tardy. I was known for being, matter of fact, I still have a detention slip from when I was tardy 13 times or something, and I had to go to detention. So we called ourselves the Breakfast Club. But we had a bond. And I thought I wanted, here again, I'm pushing the boundaries. I wanted to go to the public school. So I was always on to my parents, let me go to Noblesville High School. And they're like, no, that's not for you. And they were right, because I probably would have been eaten alive, not doing the things I needed to be in a larger environment. But that small environment, what it provided was the ability to negotiate social relationships.
Yeah.
That we understood we only had each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 50 in our graduating class. So half of them had been with me since
Yeah.
and I was the caregiver because I flunked kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of the oldest ones in my class. And so I was the caregiver. I was the knowledge sharer. I was the one that taught them about society. I was the one that told them where the first age club was, where you could go at 18. I was the one that showed them that they could get in a car and drive. I was the one that got the Blazer, which was a large vehicle, so that we could trample through the snow and not be restrained by snow in the wintertime. And I'd go around and pick them all up, and we would go to whatever, movie theater or whatever we were going to do. But we also had growth, improvement, and self-regard for each other, to where we still have the same love today. And if something would happen, they would be there for me and I would be there for them.
Wow, that is a powerful formula for a group of folks to have that friendship for such a long time in their life, because many of us don't even have one, and for you to have that many, that is awesome. Go ahead.
It takes work for relationships. Anybody that's
Always.
out there that maybe they only have one person, find that one person that you trust and build it. I was telling my sister recently, she's an executive and she's kind of a jet setter, that when you're in that car alone and you have a few moments, use that time for you, whether it be for your own meditation while you're driving, or whether it might be call our elderly aunt, to create that bond and keep that connection. I did that with my oldest sister. I would, when I was walking, that was my time to call her. And you know what?
Yeah.
Thank goodness I did that, because she was taken too soon. And I at least had that memory of every Saturday walk, I would be able to call her.
Oh, that's precious. When you're heading towards college, Rhonda, what was that? What did it look like to you as to where did you want it to go and the field? Because I know where you went to, but talk to us. How did that transition happen? And I know you picked up a skill set later on, but I wanted to know, did you at any time in your life previous to college, were you writing anything? Were you doing anything of that sort? Or was it in that location that you first began to fall in love with the pen and paper relationship? Or did you have any inclination before that?
It was definitely in college. I was in music, and during the high school years I played the piano and I was fairly good at it, and then I got stubborn and quit playing because my father had an expectation because I was a concert pianist.
Mm-hmm.
And he got upset at me because I had started dating and I didn't do as well in a competition as he thought I should. So I said, I'll never play in front of anybody again. And I never did. And I've never played since. So that's that stubborn world. But I was an injured. You talked about the trauma of growing, and there's always trauma throughout. I had a particularly traumatic experience in my junior year. It was picture day. And it was something, and I tell this story not to promote me as an individual. It tells people out there, if my message can help anybody that's gone through this, I hope it does, and it will tell you that even the righteous fall. And it says 7 times, get up the 8th. I went to work, a normal person, a normal teenage person working, and a man came in with a knife. And he would have brutally hurt me. But when I meditated and prayed in that moment, I said, God, help. He walked away and left. And I was still having challenges, and I'm in school, and I found a mentor my junior year. And she said, I'm going to tutor you to get through your English proficiency test so you can graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So that summer we sat on the floor at her home, and we studied the English language together.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a love and realized I could do it. And in that last moment, I said, well, what do I owe you? I went and had gotten another job at Arby's.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you don't owe me a thing. Just pass the test.
Right.
That changed things. That's where that social connection is important sometimes, that networking and that mentoring, because that meant I got to go to college.
Yeah.
Now, my personality then was I need to go to Dallas, the big city. I need all the famous people. This show was on television and everybody was beautiful and and it was supposed to be the singles capital of the world. And so first train, which was my Mazda RX-7. No, actually, I think I had a TC3 then. I got into it, packed it up, and went down to Dallas and started my college experience. But here again, I'm from a small town and I'm in a big community. So I was pushing the limits. I was, 16 years old, 17 years old on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it. And then I realized I could accomplish it.
Yeah.
And that turned into a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate. But the point in that is it's not that the journey is a straight journey.
No.
Because it's going to wind all over the place. It's the journey that is intended for you.
Yes. Yes. You have to stop comparing yourself to others. And that's where a lot of us get into trouble. We're focusing on the other person and missing the point. We need to look in and be guided from within and create our own journey. And people are going to be looking at you going, wow, that's interesting. As you're focusing on yours, you can get pointers and stuff like that, but it shouldn't be where you're judging yourself by theirs because you don't know the cost that they have to spend for that. They don't know the cost that you have to spend. And so I had to learn how to disconnect from that because everyone has a different journey. And or I tell people your journey will lead you to your assignment. You're all called to an assignment, and you need to find whatever that assignment is for you. And it's not a job. A job is not what the subconscious man wants. He doesn't want a fancy car. He's not interested in that. He doesn't want all those material things. He wants something deeper. And you need to get in touch with him, and he will guide you as to all the things that you ought to be going after and locate your journey. And it'll never be linear because that's a lie. It's will take you all over the place, but just be faithful to it and it'll guide you to where you ought to be and where you should be. You are in college now, Rhonda, and you are in a class and writing that spark that seed is lodged in you. Go back, Carol, go back. Remember, put yourself in that class again. Remember all of it. How did it begin to formulate? What was it that jumped to you inside of you in that class and lodged and said, and pretty much changed you and changed the direction of your life?
Oh, there's the very first assignment in writing
Wow.
was, what was your first memory? And I wasn't really sure. It took me a long time to have a first memory.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remembered my pink blanket and how, and this is, some people are going to say, oh, that's traumatic. But it was time, just like my finger sucking. Here's that vulnerable young kid, you
Yeah.
know, my family had decided, or my siblings had decided, that it was time for the blanket to go. So they took it up a tree and tied it outside my window. And then it stormed that night.
Oh, wow.
And I had told, my parents, because they were home from work, and they're like, we'll get it later. It'll be fine. Of course, the pink blanket never reappeared.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a point of being resilient and trauma. We talk about, it doesn't have to be a big, a death. It's just something that you valued that may
Mm-hmm.
be, or a fear. It can be something small, like the pink blanket being removed from you. So my whole first essay, was on the destruction of my pink blanket. But what
Mm-hmm.
I found in that moment was that when I journaled, I was healing when I was
Yeah.
writing that. I had forgotten all about it. I'd gone on with my life. I was, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old at the time, right? And so it allowed me to use pen and paper for that. The next assignment in that class was, we'd all skip school to watch Luke and Laura on General Hospital get
I
married.
remember that.
And so that we come into class and the teacher has a new assignment for us, and that is, we have to interview people that are in love and
Mm-hmm.
write an essay, because we've all missed the class. And in that moment, I called my grandmother, who had been married all her life, basically, had married at
Mm-hmm.
about the age of 13. And my grandfather had passed by that point. And I asked her what was the key to staying married and love. And her advice to me was, never go to bed angry.
Mm-hmm.
I took that advice, and it was the beginning of wisdom for me when it came to relationships. Now, sometimes it was with an understanding, and sometimes it was to my detriment, because I always wanted to forgive.
Yeah.
And I realized that, the wisdom also had costs, because
Mm-hmm.
some things are unforgivable in
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and that you need to either repair, you don't just sweep it under the rug. So those are the two first memories writing.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized then that it could help me not only thrive spiritually and within myself, but also it had an enlightened thread of what I needed to do to continue that journey of self-awareness for myself. After that, it was games on, because then I found Daniel Goleman's book about emotional intelligence, and that you don't have to have the highest IQ to be successful. And then I started to thrive in my own space. But
Yeah.
it took that self-reflection and self-awareness and deconstructing things that I'd
Yes.
never really even thought about before.
Yeah. Rhonda, a lot of people had never thought about it before and in their life because they're so busy. And again, it's not something that you talk about in the natural world, that connection of really delving into the trauma that we deal with and how to deconstruct things that has happened to us. And I tell people, when you when you become the observer in your life, that's when you are starting your journey. Once you become that observer and you start looking into your life and going, okay, that's the journey. You're now beginning to deconstruct things. And at that place, you had talked about some of the things earlier before the show, mindfulness and all these things. And I tell people, one of the things that mindfulness to me, that I had to learn what it is, was being present. I had a lesson learned because like something my sister did upset me really bad. And I remember getting up in the morning and I'm driving and on my bike and just letting it all out, just angry and spitting fire, as they say. And the thought came to me and says, why are you angry? You had no, this is not your decision. Why are you angry? Why are you taking it personal? Is this why, what are you doing? And I remember having that conversation and looking at myself and start asking myself, yeah, why is this making you upset? Why are you like this? And I remember thinking about this whole process. And I said to myself, I have to learn how to be present in the situation and realize that this is my sister's situation, not mine. And I have to allow her to go through whatever she needs to go through in order to experience what she needs to go through. But it is not mine. And I must learn to live in the present all the time, because that's the only way that I will be victorious. And if I live in the past, which has the past, what's behind there? Shame and disappointment and all the different stuff, the negative thoughts back there. What's in front of me? I'm fearful, all those different things that are sitting in front of me. But when I'm in the present, I control that. I don't know anything about the future. I don't control that. I control everything about the present, how I feel, what I think on, what I speak, all of that, my emotions, everything I control. And so I cannot blame a single person about anything. And I have to learn to be grown up, and I have to learn how to be resilient. I have to learn how to be mindful. I have to learn all the things that Rhonda is talking about, and so do you, so that we can move through our pain. But you must be present. Here you are, you came out now. I want you to talk about Crossroads. How did that, talk to me, girl?
Okay.
How in the world did you come up with how did it come up? How did that whole process came up? Talk to us and pull out a couple of characters out of there, because those characters in there are going through some stuff. And so I want
Yes.
you to talk about how it came, the genesis of the book, but also go into a couple of, because some of us have some favorite characters in our things that we write. Pull one of yours and then give us some insights on that.
Sure. So Crossroads is a crime thriller based out of Indianapolis. I wanted to use settings that people would maybe never have heard of, but were significant to my culture, my area, my thoughts, my experiences of what Indiana's like. But the actual crime is fiction. But it allowed me, once again, I talk about how I'm able to journal, but then I can do the what if. So the first chapter, so the areas that people will see that they'll recognize are Monument Circle, the city county building, the mayor's office, Holiday Park, and the dead body is found on 38th and Guyan behind on the railroad track. But all of that is symbolic of our crossroads. Every time we make a decision, we're at a crossroads. We don't make decisions just because we want to make a decision. We make them because either we're forced to or something's happened and we have to make a decision. So I chose, and when I was going through the writing process, someone's like, you need something at the beginning that really impacts people. And I thought, okay, this is my time to consider the what if, as a young woman, I had been killed. So I placed a 15-year-old girl's body off to the side of the railroad tracks. And that's the crime that we're going to explore. And I explored what it would have been like for the police to find a young woman. because I ended up having to have police escorts for a while, and I had to go through this whole section of my life. But had I not had those people, had they come and found a different outcome, what would have happened? So I had the more mature, experienced officer, and then I had the officer that had never been to a site like this before, and then we have the investigation. The main character is Paris Pennington. She's a workaholic. She works in a finance center. She doesn't want to go to jury duty. She wants to get back to work. The lawyers are dedicated to law and order in the prosecution's office, but they don't have a life. They're eating out of cardboard boxes and worried about what the political people are worried about. And then you have Billy Knuckles, which he's a very sub character, but he is every decision we've ever made that went wrong. I called him Billy Knuckles for a reason. He decides to get in the car with his friend from that he's known all his life, and he knows that there's no good going to come. But he gets in the car anyway. It could be someone that gets in the car with a drinking and driving accident. It could be somebody that, trusts the wrong person. But we all come to those points where we make bad decisions sometimes about people. So that's who he represents. He represents us as a knucklehead. Because we get into situations that we're not supposed to be. But now he either has to turn state against his friend or to help or take the charge with him. Yeah. So each one of them are out of life balance, and they're really case studies for what are we doing to make sure we have full power over our lives. And then I created the Journey to Life Balance workbook. If anybody out there feels like they're out of balance, normally we just only think of the career home balance. But if you think about, and if you look at the scales, it's everything. Our body remembers, our mind remembers everything we put it through, on, and all the details and lists and everything we do. And we go through the 13 dimensions in that book. I use the characters in Crossroads as the case studies, but we go through the 13 dimensions. What are you doing for your health? What are you doing for your spiritual connections? What are you doing for your social connections? What are you doing for your mindfulness? What are you doing for your finances? What are you doing for your loved ones? What do you do? And we go through and we create, just like you would any goal, any perspective, you create the world that you were intended to be in. And what I start with is what I call the miracle question. They use it in psychology all the time. Close your eyes. And if tomorrow you woke up and your world is exactly the way you want it, what does that world look like? And I have them detailed. They can even go shopping for it, not literal shopping, but this is what my world is supposed to be like. Mm-hmm. And then we look at what you're actually doing, and you realize I'm not doing any of the things I say I'm supposed to be doing. And you can realign with your purpose. But I tried to use the fiction to do it so that we can also have the self-help process of the ebook. And then out of that, I realized if I'm going to keep on writing crime novels, because I have 4 more out there that I haven't published, we need to learn how to be resilient in our own drama, trauma, etc. So I pulled all, because, now that I have a doctorate, I pulled all the scholarly material together, and it's like, why aren't we talking about the steps to resilience and teaching it to our children? Yeah. And so that's kind of the story of how writing one essay about my first memory transformed. I'd been writing for years ever since then. And finally it took my sister saying, why aren't you doing anything with it? And I had to get aligned with my own purpose.
Yeah, those siblings. My sister said something like that to me about my life as far as doing what I'm doing. She asked me a question, why are you still here? And I was, I had my plan and I was doing my corporate America thing. She asked me that one day on the phone, and we hung up. And that question haunted me for years, 2 years. I'm delaying, but it would still be there every morning, every night, greeting and talking to me quietly. And of course, some of us are a little stubborn. I was resisting, and then I had to go to the hospital. And when I was in the hospital, I was like, okay, I got the message. I'm out.
You were Job. You were resisting, and you ended up in the point you were supposed to be all along if you had done it 3 years before, but you may not have been ready.
Yes.
Because I had, like, when she said, why aren't you doing anything about, with them? I probably wasn't ready to be able to handle the fear of being a successful writer. I probably wouldn't have even, valued it like I do today. I love to hear from people that have read my work. I love now to engage with people on podcasts, and anybody out there realize that you have a blessing now in podcasts where you can, just with, a like, subscribe, and share, you have another resource to help you through your day that requires no work from you other than a listen.
Yeah, I had to come to the place to surrender. I was fighting for 3 years, doing it my way. I had to, God was bringing, this battle was between him and I knew it. And I would tell him, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. And I'd doing my stuff, not yet, not yet. Yeah, my plans. And that day when I came to, and I was in the hospital in the ICU for a couple of weeks, and I remember laying there, and I said to him, I said to him, yeah, I'm ready now. I know what you and I have been having this conversation for a very long time, and I am ready to do what I know that is on my heart, and I want to do it, but I wanted some security first. And he was trying to tell me, son, this is a walk by faith. You have to surrender, and I'll take care of you. And sure enough, it is a walk by faith. I remember just walking and going, okay, I'll trust you on this. And my world just began to change. And I want to tell anyone out there, if you're going to trust anyone, trust God. He has the ability, the wisdom, the knowledge, the insight, all of the other things that you and I don't have, and anyone on this planet doesn't have it. And he has it too, and he promises to take care of you and to support you, and he will do it. The Bible says he's not a man that he should lie. And so if that's the case, then just surrender, man, because he's going to do what he said he's going to do. So you wrote the book. It's a success. Talk to me as to you. What did it do to you seeing this, seeing what, and remembering and understanding what the first essay about that blanket and the fruit that it brought forward in Crossroads, and seeing the response that people gave, that you received from the book and stuff like that? What did it do to you?
Well, first, probably the first realization that maybe it was going to be successful, or maybe it was going to be read even by somebody, was the publisher that I used suggested that I write a query letter to Meryl Hemingway, which is the Academy Award winning actress. And I'm like, why would she care about Crossroads? And then they said she's all about life balance and mental health and making sure you take care of yourself. And since all the characters have that model, we think that she would enjoy it. We'll deliver the query letter to her. So I'm like, well, I'll try it, and a good endorsement would be wonderful for it. And it took about 2 or 3 weeks after I gave them the letter that she wrote back with a YouTube video. And that YouTube video is called Meryl Hemingway praises Rhonda Parker Taylor's Crossroads. And of course, she introduces herself to the audience and that she's the granddaughter of Ernest Hemingway, the great writer. And then she talks about her own crossroads and how she relates to the book. And that, we all come to that point where we have to make decisions on our lives on what our purpose is and where we're going to go and how we're going to manage our life. And then she said at the end, even chocolate has an expiration date. And as I'm listening, my whole body and being changed. I got tingles up and down my spine. It was almost like it was a healing process for me too.
Yeah.
Everything I'd gone through up to that point, like maybe a God wink of some sort, that you're going to be okay. Everything's going to be exactly the way you want it to be. And of course, I was so thrilled. I was the first 1,000 views probably, kept replaying it. And then, it took common sense and a few accountability partners like my husband to say, are you in this for a pat on the back? Or are you in this to get your message out and get people to read your book? And then I really, at first I was a little set back, and it's like, wait a minute. But, those accountability partners are important because if they can speak the truth into your scenario, you realize your purpose is bigger than just one person, just one review, just one promotion, whatever it might be that you're desiring and you needing to be self-actualized. I realized then that my intentions wasn't just to get it published. I wanted to start my purpose. I wanted to align with a message that I can show people that your normal everyday life that goes up and down, and every one of the books that are fiction are that way. They have some kind of message, some kind of trauma, some kind of drama that everybody's going through, and that we still survive at the end and it can be a happy ending. And it can be that we've walked through the coals with a purpose on the other side. And we can turn our pain into our purpose. So I realized then that, hey, I had more work to do. And I had to get back up on the horse and say, okay, let's get it out there now.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a powerful story. You've done so much, Rhonda. You've been through so much. You've healed. You recognize all the pain that you have gone through as an individual and work. And we will continue to work things out as we go. That's something that is already and always and will never cease. So we're here talking. Look at the camera, Ron, and talk to someone. I know you had an opportunity just now, but talk to them and talk to someone. Young Rhonda, you're talking to those type individual, someone that has been hurting for a while. They're sitting there, they may have listening to us and their heads down, shaking. A young mother, single dad, a young woman, young man, old, it doesn't matter. They're just sitting there and they're saying, I don't know. I just want to check out. I'm done. I'm tired, man. I'm just tired. What would you say to that individual that is just sitting there saying, I'm tired. I'm done. I just want to throw up my hands and call it a day. What would be your message to that individual that is listening?
When I've been in those moments, when I've felt like there was no hope, when I thought that the pain was too hard to carry, because we all go through those times, I had to realize that tomorrow is another day. Put one foot in front of the other. And the cartoon lands, they call it put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door like they do in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman. But in Japanese terminology, the longest journey is shortened by the first step. Realize that don't let life dim your light. So life and light. You have things to offer, not only yourself, but others. And when doing that, you will find your purpose in your way again. Sometimes you just fake it till you make it, but you got to claim that one moment and realize and say, it's going to be okay, and put one foot in front of the other. And when you do that, it's a little easier to get out of bed. It's a little easier to face stress. It's a little easier to go in there and get something to eat when you don't feel like eating at all, because you realize that all hard work pays off. And the hard work sometimes has to be on yourself. Sometimes it has to be to give you hope. Sometimes the hope is that if it's meant to be, you have to be able to pull yourself up and use the meditation and be intentional about it. Find something beautiful. I put sensory things throughout the house, whether it be opening up the blinds and looking at the critters or the wildlife outside. Or, it might be, if you're in the city, it might be cars racing by. Or it might be one of those candles at nighttime that sparkle up on its own battery, and it has a twirl of like snow that I can sit there and just focus on the beauty of it. Or a lava lamp. I put these sensory things because sometimes when I focus on something else that brings me joy, it brings the joy back into my heart, even if it's for a fleeting moment.
That, guys, is absolutely sound advice. And I'm going to let it and leave it at that moment right there. We're going to provide everything for you to get access to, Rhonda, and I want you guys to get access to her. The book is rich. I'm going to buy a copy myself. As I always tell you guys, the books house wisdom and knowledge, stuff that will free you. I know because several books have freed me, and I encourage you to give books as presents to friends and family members that are in hard places. And Rhonda's book is one of those books that you would give to that individual because it speaks to them and how to assist them to move through where they're at. Rhonda, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment and sharing your precious time and your journey and all that is you. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and everybody be blessed.
Thank you. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.